There's no ism. It's either right or wrong, good or evil. You're either on the side of evil or you're on the side of good. And so that we can become one nation
Right.
under God again, I would unite the country in that way. The first thing I would do.
I love
David Pakman on with Jesse Lee Peterson. When they get together, it is always a clash of culture. Definitely worth watching. David tries, he really, really tries hard to corner Jesse Lee Peterson, but David Pakman can't do it. Jesse Lee Peterson is just uncornerable. It's almost hilarious to watch David Pakman. He's just doing all these tactics to kind of passive aggressively imply that Jesse doesn't know what he's talking about. Jesse doesn't bite on any of that stuff. They talk about criticizing Trump, the upper hand, isms. This is a dynamic that you don't want to miss. It's a unique one. It's one from kind of like a throwback. You don't see this much anymore, like this type of dynamic where it's still civil and they're basically very much on the opposite sides. David Pakman, Jesse Lee Peterson, let's check it out.
Love it. So when you say you want to get rid of those words,
Yes.
would you ban the words? Would you outlaw the teaching of those words in school? Like schools can't use the word racism? How do you do that?
I definitely wouldn't ban the word.
Did you say,
but I
I'm
would
sorry, you
not
said
allow-
you would
I
or you would not? You would or you
I
would
would
not?
not ban the
Okay.
word. You can't ban the word.
Got it.
But I would not allow the schools to teach that to the children and brainwash them
Got it.
in order to do what we see that they have done to the young folks already.
Got it.
It should be illegal. Jesse Lee Peterson is absolutely right here. It should be illegal, or it really should be left up to the local areas, not the federal government. So let me make sure I'm clear about that. But I agree with Jesse Lee Peterson. Racism should not be taught in school. As far as basically, if you don't like this group, you're bad. No, that's a preference. You can like or dislike whoever you want for whatever reasons you want. I don't have to respect it. You don't have to respect it. But it shouldn't be taught, hey, if you don't like this group, maybe this group wears tiny, funny hats. And you say, the majority, maybe 90% of them, I kind of don't like. Or maybe this group wears a certain color shirt, or their skin is a certain color. And you say, just based on my life experience, I don't like 90% of them. I don't care what the color is. I don't care how small the hat is. I don't care what the reason is. Jesse Lee Peterson is right. David Pakman, and this is going to let him breathe. He's not going to he obviously doesn't agree, but he's going to let this conversation breathe. Nowadays, he wouldn't do that, in my opinion. But you should not teach that as a fact. If you like rainbows, if you're a rainbow warrior and you've transformed, they teach that right now in schools as a good thing. No, that shouldn't be taught as a good thing. If you teach something as this is what it is, but it's such a thin line, I think it should be up to the local communities. Let's get back to Jesse Lee Peterson, but I absolutely agree with him, and he's on the David Pakman show.
So school curriculum could not include the word racism.
That's right, because it doesn't exist.
Right.
It's a brainwashing technique to use.
No, you could define I don't like the word because I don't know what it really means, but yeah, it has a meaning. If somebody can define it, it has a meaning. So it does exist. And if you want to just teach this is what it is, I don't really have a problem with that. But the problem is we teach it as it's a bad thing to have a preference. All it is a preference. That's all it is.
Used to divide. We are Americans. We are America. We are one nation under God.
Yeah.
And those words tend to divide us.
Would you ban, and so you don't want any isms taught in school?
No racism, no sexism, no homophobism, no Allah-u-Abba-ism, no white supremacism.
Stay tuned. Give the chat. If you want to help the channel out and get more clicks and more clips like this and curated content and reactions, give a like, comment. That's the best way you can support. Stay tuned here. Jesse Lee Peterson is about to say something I strongly disagree with, though.
Would you ban, and so you don't want any isms taught in school?
No racism, no sexism, no homophobism, no Allah-u-Abba-ism, no white supremacism, and no anti-Semitism. No ism. It's either right or wrong, good or evil.
Now, I'm sure you also then would say that when Republicans use the isms socialism and communism, that's also divisive, right? And wrong.
No, because there is socialism. Look at the Democratic Party.
Oh,
Look at the mindset of most black people. They are socialists in their mind, in that they rely on the government to do for them and tell them when and where and how, rather than doing for themselves. As a matter of fact, that's what the Democrats want to do by way of the government, is to control the people by giving them things and thinking for them and providing, rather than providing the folks providing for themselves.
This is a terrible answer by Jesse Lee Peterson. It's just awful. If you're against isms, you're against isms. I am against isms. Should it be taught? Should the what socialism is be taught? Yes, but it shouldn't be taught whether it's good or bad. Even capitalism shouldn't be taught as good or bad. In my ideal, we're just talking about in hypothetically, we know where this isn't going to happen. The government controls our schools, so the government's going to control the narrative overall, and we don't take control of our local areas. That's the true issue that David Pakman and Jesse Lee Peterson aren't equipped to handle. But he's absolutely wrong. Socialism and communism and racism and all the other isms could be taught as long as they are defined. So you have to define, you can't just say, well, racism, and you don't define what it means. But you can put a definition together, and we'll do that in a second for communism, for socialism, for fifth graders, for sixth graders, for ninth graders. That should be taught. It shouldn't be taught that this socialist dictator was bad. I don't care if if he's a fascist, a fascism. I don't care if he had a funny little mustache. He should not be taught as if he's good or bad. That is an opinion. What I need from you are facts and history. I'll never forget when I took and I studied World War II, I think this was 9th or 10th grade. Never forget. We studied the history of World War II, the same basics you hear all the time. Never got told the truth, or not even the truth, the whole story. And after we were done with World War II, we took a field trip to see, it was in the movie theaters, the movie Schindler's List. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. It is just Isaac Perlman. I used to play violin. Isaac Perlman on the violin. What a beautiful song from John Williams. Steven Spielberg, out of his mind. Liam Neeson, and it's an amazing movie. I love that movie. But that's fiction. You don't end a history lesson on World War II with propaganda. That makes no sense. So that's the problem here, and neither one of them are equipped to have the right discussion here. Let's get back to the clip.
Who is a prominent Democrat who's a socialist?
Communism exists.
Who is a prominent Democrat that's a communist?
Wow, that's a good one. You know those four radical women that, who are those stupid women? The one from New York and Detroit. What? What? Yeah, the Squad. Those are perfect example of communism. I can't think of the name. It's so stupid.
Sure. So they
Cortez, I believe, from New York. That's a nutcase. I don't even understand why anyone would even listen to her.
Right.
Let's more vote for her. But you have the other one out of what? Ilhan Omar and another one.
And what communist
Khalid.
what communist policy have they advocated for?
They want to take care of the people.
They want to take care of the people.
They want to think for the people. They want to give free health care, free everything for the folks. Not all are they evil. It's pure communism.
Jesse, do you know what communism?
I have a problem here. David Peckman's doing the interview is solid from his standpoint. I mean, he's not interjecting too much of his ideology. He asked a great question. You don't want racism in the classroom, but you do want socialism. Oh, okay. And Jesse Lee Peterson has a right to that. If in the local area, the citizens in that area say, I want to teach socialism as a positive thing, or I want to teach it in the class and communism, I'm perfectly fine with that. I'm just giving my opinion if I could control the school that my kids go to, if I were homeschooling in a way that didn't follow these curriculums that force you to teach in a certain way, that's how I would teach it. Impartial, neutral decisions. But if you don't know who the Squad is, everybody watching this probably do, I think you can. You can teach. So the Squad are this loosely labeled group of Congress, men and women. Are there any men in it now? I guess you can expand it to some men, but Jamal Bowman is out. So I don't know if there's technically a man in the squad, but it doesn't matter. You have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Pressley, Rashida Tlaib, and there's it used to be Cori Bush, but I think that's who you got right now as a core group. And I agree with them on some things. People on the right, like Jesse Lee Peterson, they look at anything that is labeled as socialist as bad. That does not make sense. We do not live in a pure capitalist society. We have welfare. We have Social Security. We have government subsidies for all these businesses, electric vehicles and farmers, and everybody's getting government money. What is the purpose of paying taxes if it's not to redistribute the wealth? If David Pakman were to ask me what is the definition of socialism, I would tell him it is just it is just the redistribution of wealth. That's what it is. The redistribution of resources. That's all social to me. I don't know. I'm not a philosopher. When I say it, that's what I mean. So when you talk about healthcare, we all pay taxes to the federal government. Federal government would take it. We revenue $5 trillion, not even counting the money they print, and they redistribute it to everyone in the form of, here's your basic healthcare. That's not going to be a premium plan. If you want a premium plan, you probably get it through your employer the same way it's done now, but you would have a basic level of coverage. How is that bad, Jesse Lee Peterson? Explain to me how that's bad. Explain to me, Jesse Lee Peterson, and he does a good job here, but it looks like I'm going to go in on him more than David Pakman, because David Pakman didn't even really express his views. Explain to me what the purpose of the federal government is, Jesse Lee Peterson. If I pay taxes, where are they going to? Where do they go? If they're not being redistributed with this, which is socialism, then you're arguing for libertarianism, which is perfectly fine, but I need you to articulate that. Do you understand where my problem is with Jesse Lee Peterson on this? Number one, what's the problem with everybody having health care? Number two, we're paying taxes. So if you don't think the money should be redistributed back to the people, what should happen to the money that we're paying taxes on? Are you saying that we shouldn't pay taxes? Then I'm fine with that conversation. That's a whole different line of conversation to go down. And now we're going to get into the definition of communism. Let's go. Good question by David Pakman.
Yes.
What is it?
The people, when someone else wants to control you, it's about controlling other people.
Communism is controlling other people. That's interesting. Yes. That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, that is interesting. I don't understand that. So great. When we have these discussions, we have to define things. And here's my concept of communism. I don't know if I have a clean definition of it, and you don't hear me use that term that often. Socialism, I have a clear definition. I just defined that. Communism, I would say, is when a society, and I'm not an expert here, I'm confident in my definition of socialism. I'm confident in my definition of populism, the belief that power should be distributed to as many people as possible. Very close to the socialism in a way. But for communism, I'm not as confident. But for communism, I explain it as everyone in a society is forced to share everything equally. So that's different than socialism. Let me repeat that again. It's a society in which everyone is forced to share all resources equally. Land, money, everything. But the other part of it that I have to flesh out with the definition is the dictator, the benevolent dictator in charge, doesn't have to abide by those rules. So you see the problem I have with communism? I'm a populist. The centralized force, their only job is to redistribute, to make sure that power is distributed to as many people as possible. Not evenly, not necessarily evenly. You have opportunity to succeed. Communism is no. That's where the term equity comes in. We control the outcome. So no matter how hard you work, you're capped. So if communism would be I'm just making this up. I'm not saying this happened in any country. I'm just making this up. Communism would be nobody can make more than $100,000 a year. If you make more than $100,000 a year, we take that and give it to a bum, and we make sure that they make $100,000 a year. That's pure communism. That's not what I advocate for when I talk about populism. That's not what I advocate for when I talk about socialism. Communism is we have to make sure that you are all even except for us, the ones in charge. We don't. We eat grapes fed to us by the most beautiful women that you've ever seen on the planet. And we have gold-laden, platinum laden mansions with cyber trucks and all kinds of fantasies. We're living a fantasy heathen world. We're fine. You plebs are capped at $50,000 and y'all share that stuff around. That's what communism is to me. Sharing everything with an equal outcome. Let's get back to the clip.
You've really said a lot here, and I'm doing the best I can to sort of keep up with all of it. Tell me, when you look at Donald Trump, you've told us all of the things that you think he's done great, except then you said you don't really care about those things like economics and trade and all of that stuff.
I care about them, but that's not my thing. I don't pay a lot of attention to that.
Right. So here's my question. Are you able to identify anything you don't like that Donald Trump has done?
I don't know how much I agree with him on letting the inmates out of the prisons.
Which inmates are those? Which inmates are those? Which inmates are those?
You know how they let a lot of the prisons out by saying that they were there because they sold pot or their crime wasn't bad enough to keep them in prison. Some kind of dumb stuff like that.
You don't like that?
I don't know how much I support that because I haven't had time to really look into that. I just feel that if you do the crime, you should do the time, and it doesn't matter what color you are.
Right.
I'm not in total support of that.
And
a lot of conservatives are not. He's talking about the First Step Act. The First Step Act was signed into law by Donald Trump in December of 2018. It was, anytime you hear the term bipartisan, be very afraid. It was a bipartisan criminal justice reform bill aimed at reducing the federal prison population and improving conditions for inmates. It specifically addressed issues like harsh sentencing, rehabilitation, and reentry opportunities for federal prisoners. Here's part of my problem with, I don't even want to get into was it a good thing or bad. Here's one of the things that I don't like about the First Step Act. Well, maybe it did, maybe I'm wrong here. What I was going to say is, did Donald Trump really get credit from the left for doing something that I would think the left would support? So he didn't get credit for it from the Kyle Kalinskis of the world, but they're lunatics at this point. The Destinys of the world, they're lunatics. The David Pakmans of the world, I don't even know what he is, but they didn't get credit from them, but he did get credit from the Amber Roses of the world, who I do not view favorably. I'm not an ally of, but Amber Rose spoke at the RNC, and the Republicans did get a wider tent. So I checked myself in the middle of that take. The First Step Act is what Jesse Lee Peterson is talking about he doesn't like, actually did help Donald Trump, I think, get reelected in 2024. That made it easier for people who identify as black, for people who identify as Amber Rose types to support Donald Trump and say, look, he did the First Step Act. So it did help. So I actually will say, I'm not going to get into the details of the act, but I will say it didn't help with the influencer left. It didn't help with the Cenk Uygur left, even now that they've kind of want to get out their box of the populist left kind of. It didn't help with the Anna Kasparian left. It didn't help with the Sam Cedar left. It didn't help with the Emma Vignan left. It didn't help with the Francesca Fiorentini left, but it did help with the Amber Rose left. We just have a little bit left in the clip.
And did you,
And one other that might make you feel good on the inside. I don't like the fact that right now there's a position open on the U.S. Supreme Court.
Yes.
I don't like the fact that he is nominating a woman just because it's a woman.
Really?
In America, it should be the best qualified person. and not even say, hey, I'm going to put a woman there, or I'm going
Right.
to put a man there, I'm going to put a black there, I'm going to put a homosexual there, or anything like that. But I'm going to look and find the best person that's qualified,
Right.
and that's the person I'm going to put in that position. That is the American way.
So
So that is interesting. I totally forgot about that. Donald Trump did. I agree with Jesse Lee Peterson here. We're going to end with this. Donald Trump did state back when after Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away during a campaign rally, he specifically said he would choose a woman to fill the vacancy. Right after that, who did he choose? Amy Coney Barrett, who is one of the worst, without question, the worst nominee that Donald Trump supported for the Supreme Court. Amy Coney Barrett. I'm not gonna sidetrack into. We'll do that another conversation. Maybe we'll do that on a live stream or something like that. I want to go live with the after show carnage. Let me know what you think on this one. Fun clip. And you see, you don't have to have yelling and just unhinged ad hominems to have a good discussion. Let me know what you think in the comments.